Okay, Assalamu alaikum, my dear friends and participants. Today, the topic that we are going to discuss, as you all should be knowing, is justice in the Quran. And this is something which is of extreme importance to us because, as individuals, we are called upon to give verdicts, to be in a position to judge between people, and it is extremely difficult in certain situations when we are faced with people who are close to us, people who are related to us, that we still deliver justice. And if you just take a look at history, you'll find out that one of the biggest ingredients of all countries and all states, the way they have been established, is to administer justice to their people. And this not justice at the court level, but justice at the social level as well. And not only at the social level, but also at the individual level. So you can see that there are so many levels of justice that we are talking about. It's like being just in our own lives, it's being just as a society, just as a country who has a number of minorities and ethnicities living in a country, and above all, justice between humanity. So you see, this is something which is spread far and wide, and I think this is probably the reason why, if you've heard of Socrates, one of the premier scholars of Greek philosophy, he used to say one thing, and that has come down to us through his student Plato. He said that justice is the queen of all virtues, means that it stands at the pinnacle of all virtues. So today we're going to take a look at some of the Quranic verses that deal with justice. And as I said, that this is the Quran is replete with verses with justice. The only thing is that at times there are areas in which justice is specific, it's very specific in its context, but this is not always the case. You can clearly see that as far as one's individual upbringing is concerned, and as far as our collectivity is concerned, all of these are interrelated, they are intertwined, and at times you just cannot sort of divide them into two. So therefore I would now share with you some of the slides that have been made for this class, so that we can have a reading, and at the same time we are also able to discuss these passages from the Quran. So you have the slides now with you. So okay, I'm just first of all going to read out the first passage before you, and I'd request Fatima first of all to read the translation. The passage reads, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qist ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على أن لا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. So Fatima Hussain, can you please read the translation?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Believers adhere to justice by bearing witness to it, for God and the animosity for your nation should not induce you to not do justice. Be just. This is nearer to piety, and have fear of God. Indeed, God is well aware of what you do.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, the next verse is, this is Surah Nisa, this is the fourth verse, verse 135. It says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu kawwamina bil qist shuhada'a lillahi walau ala anfusikum awil walidaini wal aqrabin in yakun ghaniyan aw faqiran fallahu awla bihima fala tattabi'ul hawa an ta'dilu wa in talwu aw tu'ridu fa inna Allaha kana bima ta'maluna khabira. Okay, now I'll ask.
Believers, adhere to justice by bearing witness to it for God, even though it be against yourselves, your parents, or your kinsfolk. If someone is rich or poor, God only is more worthy for both. So do not be led by base desires, lest as a result you swerve from the truth. And if you distort what is true and just, or evade it, you should remember that God is well aware of what you do.
Oh, thank you for that, Amira. Okay, the next verse is Shahidallahu annahu la ilaha illa huwa al malaikatu wa ulul ilm qa'iman bil qist la ilaha illa huwa al Azizul Hakim. Okay, Maria Iqbal, can I please request you to read the translation?
Yeah. God bears witness that there is no God but He, and so do the angels and people who have true knowledge. He is fully adherent to justice. There is no other God. He is the mighty, the wise.
Thank you very much, Maria. Okay, the fourth one is وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسِ بِالْقِسْطِ. And can I now request Josefa?
God, and then with them we sent down our book, which is the scale, so that people are able to adhere to justice about religion.
Okay, just one explanation that I'd like to give here is that the word them actually qualifies prophets of God. So, because they were mentioned in the previous verse, so they are mentioned here as a pronoun. So you can easily read it as, and with prophets we sent down our book. God is saying with the prophets we are set down our book so that people are able to adhere to justice. Thank you for that. Okay, the final verse. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan wa ita'i zil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'izukum la'allakum tazakkarun. Okay, can I ask Mahin?
God enjoins you to justice, goodness, and spending on the kindred, and forbids lewdness, evil, and arrogance. He admonishes you so that you may take heed.
Thank you very much, Mahin. So now we move on to these comprehension questions. So these are 5 actually verses that I picked from the Quran. There are more than 5 regarding justice because this is a very fundamental thing. But I can say that these 5 are some very fundamental verses which relate to justice, the topic that we are discussing today. And each has a very specific message. Each has something very specific to tell you, some aspect of justice. It's like there are some things which you would like to specially gauge out of a particular verse. So your first comprehension question is that please take a few moments, just reflect on these verses and either make a mental note or jot down on your computers or maybe on a piece of paper. What do you think is the basic message of each of these 5 verses, all relating to justice in some way or the other? Please begin now. So if you find any word that needs any explanation, please let me know. Let's start discussing. And Ali, can I please request you to let us know what do you make out of the first verse?
To be just to most people.
Okay, to be just to all. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Alicia, what do you think?
I think that it means to like treat everyone like the same because it's pious.
Okay. Fatima and Ariba.
I think the main message in the verse is to not let the hostility in a nation affect your practice to judge, to stick to justice.
So what would that mean? If you have a nation who is at daggers drawn with you, who is your enemy, do you think that the verse is telling us that even with your enemies you have to dispense with justice?
Yeah, as in like even if there's mistreatment and even if there is fear, you should still stick to justice.
Okay. Okay, let's see. What about Azan?
Like whatever you do, God will like witness. Like if you don't do just.
Okay.
It's like Allah knows everything what you do.
Sine, what in your opinion is the message of the first verse?
Similar to what some people have said before, I think the first main component is that it's under witness of God, so everything like justice should be done in relation to like being judged by God. So you should do everything with justice because it's because God's witnessing it. And the second part is even in animosity, it's pious to have justice and execute it.
Okay. Fine, thank you for that, Sine. So I'll now ask Mahin.
I think that Sine phrased it really well about how you should be just as God is witnessing all your actions, and I think that should be a powerful enough motivator for you to be there in your everyday life.
Okay, so anyone else who would like to add anything? Anyone amongst you, like it's Zara or Zoya or Sana, Yahya, Maria, Muhammad? Any of you who would like to add something, or maybe if you differ, Zirag, you're too included. So any one of you who would like to elaborate more, or maybe corroborate, you can even say yes to what people have already said, or maybe give a different interpretation.
I think it says that justice should be fair-minded, and perhaps animosity for a nation or feelings for a different stance shouldn't affect it.
Right. So that's absolutely right. So thank you, dear friends. You've almost got all of this right. As you can see, the stress here is that this is, I think, the pinnacle of justice. This is something which is really an outstanding thing. And if you just sum up in one verse, it says that you have to be just to your enemies. I mean, it's always easy to be just to your friends. It's always easy to be just to people who you like, who you live amongst, and you don't have a problem with them. But look at people who might have really harmed you. They could have done it in a very bad way. And here, actually, what is being said is not on an individual level. It is being said at the collective level. So it says that the animosity for a nation should not induce you to do not justice. So in other words, it's like a country versus another country. So the basic stress that first needs to be understood is that this verse is dealing in its collective capacity with various countries and nations of the world, and it is telling them that if some other nation has been aggressive, some other nation has been unjust to you, and some other nation is an enemy to you, and the time comes when you have to say something which is truth, which is just regarding that particular nation, because you see that nation could still be having some good points in spite of being unjust to you or to another nation, or being an enemy to that nation. So the verse tells us that this is the pinnacle of justice, that you have to be just to your enemy nations. So please get this, the important thing that you need to realize is when you study the Quran, that you have to actually pick every verse in a way and read every verse in a way that the stresses are really understood. So the stress here is Shana'anu qawmin, which means the animosity for a nation, enmity for a nation. So it is basically a collective directive being given to people that in their collective capacities as a country, they should not exceed the limits, they should not be unjust to people, to other nations who have been unjust to them. So basically it's as you can say, it's a verse which deals with the collective capacity. Okay, now we're going to move on to the second verse, and you can clearly see that this verse also has a very important message to give. Sana Iqbal, what do you think is the message of this verse?
I think it's that we should always tell the truth, even if it's like going against your loved ones. And we shouldn't like put our emotions in the middle. It's like we should do the right thing, which is to tell the truth.
So if you could make a comparison with the verse that we have just studied, how would you compare it with the previous verse? Because the previous verse also told you to be just to your enemies at the collective level. So how would this relate to you? Because there is a very obvious contrast between this verse and that verse. Justice is the common thing, of course, both tell us to be just, but there is as far as the sphere of justice is concerned, or the ambit of justice is concerned, don't you think there is a clear distinction between both these verses?
Yeah.
And what is that?
I think it's that we're like a witness for God.
So that's the commonality. I was talking about the contrast, the thing which makes them distinctive. Okay, we'll come back to that. So, Zirak, what do you think is the message of this verse, and how do you compare it to the previous one?
So
Yeah.
it's that justice should be fair, whether it's done to someone of your family, someone you know, or someone
Okay.
who is a stranger to you.
Right. So you're very close to the answer, but you see there is this distinction between this verse. So just let me, explain it a little further. As far as the previous verse was concerned, it was talking about justice regarding your collectivity. When you're talking in your as a collectivity, you're telling other people that as a collectivity, as a nation, we should not be unjust to other nations. So that was a collectivity talking to another collectivity. Here in this particular verse, it is the individual. So the contrast which you can see between both these verses is the first of these verses deals with a collectivity in which a nation has to be just to another nation. So this is addressing them in their collective capacity. And here we are being addressed in our individual capacities. So it says that you people should bear witness to the truth. You should be just, even if it goes against you. I mean, what does that mean? Of course, it means it goes against our interests. It goes against our benefits, and not only ours, but those of our parents, our relatives. I think this is something which is even perhaps more difficult, because it is telling us that if there is someone against you, there's someone who's pitted against you, and that someone is one of your relatives, as close as your father or your mother, even then, if you have to speak the truth and it annoys them or it makes them angry, even then you have to say the truth. So this is the stress, and as you can see, walau ala anfusikum is something which tells us that it doesn't matter whether the consequence is going to ill affect you as far as you speak the truth. So I think these two verses have a very powerful message, and of course there are just two capacities of each of us. One is the collective capacity, we live in a country, and one is an individual capacity, we as individuals we behave with our individuals. So it's like encompassing both our capacities that these two verses, they beautifully sum up our attitude as far as justice is concerned. So thank you for that. Okay, we are now going to move on to the third verse. Shahidallahu annahu la ilaha. So this is what this verse is talking about, that God bears witness that there is no God but He, and so do the angels and people who have true knowledge. He is fully adherent to justice. Okay, so Zoya Bernie.
So I think that this ayah is reminding us that there is only one God, and Allah is the God, and that He's always just and fair, and He has knowledge over everything, and therefore He is just to everything.
Right. So you see, the point is that this verse is talking about more than one thing, but the one thing that is talking about vis-a-vis justice is that God adheres to justice. Annahu qaimam bil qist, which means that God is someone who is always adhering to justice, who will always dispense with justice. So if this is the case, the question that comes to our mind naturally would be that what exactly does God want to tell us when He says that He is just? After all, we know that He is just, because how can a God not be just? So it couldn't have been so simple. There has to be something deeper when God says that I am just. So is there a consequence of the fact that God is just? So what do you think, Yahya? So the verse is pretty simple. It says that God is just. He adheres to justice. Then what? So what exactly does God want to tell us when He says that He is just? What comes to your mind? Anything that comes to your mind?
The day of judgment comes to my mind.
Okay.
When it says that God is just, you kind of have the idea that on the day of judgment, He will render justice.
So does this mean that he would not render justice in this world?
He will in this world too, but I mean, the day of judgment is like the ultimate.
That is the ultimate. Okay. Anything else that is that comes to your mind? So you see, the important thing that you need to understand is that one of the points that you made is absolutely correct. That the first thing that comes to your mind is that the day of judgment, God is going to be showing His complete justice, and if there was anything which was left to this world, because this world is not a place of justice; it's a place of trial. So, of course, the day of judgment would be the final day when everything would be set right. But there's another message to this as well, and that is that if God is just, then He expects us to be just as well. So you see, there is this verse in the Bible which tells us, very earlier on in the Bible, it tells us that God created man in His own image. I'm sure some of you might have heard of this verse. So what it means is that there are some qualities which God has, and we also have those qualities, although at a very, very minute level as compared to God. But when He says that I have created man in my own image, He actually wanted to say that some of the attributes and qualities I have, I would like the same to, I have given the same to mankind as well, but at the same time they need to practice it. So God says that I am just, and my attributes, one of my greatest attributes is justice. So therefore I expect my creation to be just as well, just in this world. So you see, you can see that there are two messages coming out. One is that the day of judgment is a day when God is going to dispense with justice, and before that day comes, of course, we are going to live in this world. All of us are living in this world, so we also need to be just in our lives. And this has so many dimensions. As I said, times come when you have to say the truth. We have to speak the truth, even if it goes against your interest, as we just studied. And it is here that we are tested the most. So thank you. This was a good session. This is a good answer by all of you. Let's go on to the fourth verse. And it says, I'm going to just read out the fourth verse once again for you, so that you have the context. And with the prophets, this is what God is telling us. With the prophets, we sent down our book, which is the scale, so that people are able to adhere to justice about religion. So I think the message again here is pretty clear, that it tells us about the purpose of the books, the reason why God has sent down these books to you. So Mahin, what do you think is the message of this book, of this verse?
No, I think that it tells us the importance and the role of the Quran and how it can act as a guide for people. And if people adhere to it and follow it strongly and justly, then
Okay.
justice will be portrayed in everyday life.
Okay. Sine, what do you think?
I think it's like, if you're ever confused about what might be just, you can use this holy book as a merit. So if you need any clarification, you can look at like certain examples.
Okay, that's absolutely right. So you see, the purpose of divine books is what is being told to us in this verse, and we are being told that if there is anything which is disputed or disputable in matters of religion, if you want to resolve it, then you just have to take recourse and look up the Quran. So it's going to settle all your religious differences, all differences which arise out of religious dispute or religious argumentation, which automatically tells us that this is a guide regarding all religious affairs. For example, Tawheed, the monotheism, or the concept of the hereafter, the concept of God Himself, the concept of how we administer various governments, they do so in this world, and many other collective affairs. So if all these affairs, they need to be guided, they need guidance, then the Quran says that all you need to do is to pick it up and just find out the relevant portion, pick up the relevant portion and address yourself with it. So as you can see, that the purpose of divine books is not to provide you with all sorts of knowledge, as has at times been erroneously understood. People think that the Quran or divine scriptures should have everything in them, should have answers to all our questions. So this verse is actually telling us, no, this is not the case, because a lot of answers can be addressed and can be gauged from your own common sense. Your own common sense is sufficient to answer many things that go on in the world, as well as a lot of things that you do in science and many other areas, like so many discoveries. For that you don't need the Quran. So what the verse is telling us is that just like settling your religious differences, the Quran is there. Don't look for other things from the in the Quran. So if you have to make advances in science, if you have to construct roads and bridges and all sorts of things, you have to rely on your common sense, on your experience, on the intellect that God has given you. So your intellect is also a blessing of God, and it has to be used in all those affairs, those worldly affairs. But as far as religion is concerned, the book of God is there to guide you. This is a very important distinction, that if this is kept in mind, you'll find out that human intellect is also a blessing of God, and that too is something that must not be regarded as anything inferior. So what we can say is that God's guidance starts where intellectual guidance falls short, when our own intellect is not able to decide certain things. So it is here that God steps in and complements the shortfall that we might have in our intellectual guidance. Okay, let's move on to the last verse that we are going to study today, and this verse, as you can see, is also an important verse. It says, إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. Remember, as you can see, that a lot of these verses speak about other things as well besides justice. So at the moment, perhaps we are not directly concerned with the rest of the things, because verses they occur in a compound way. We are more concentrating on how each of these verses deals with justice. So what is exactly the message of this last verse? Even I'll ask Josefa.
I think that it tells us that Allah is saying that you should go towards justice and goodness overall, and not other things like evil and arrogance.
Right. Okay, that is fine. Okay, Zara Bernie, what do you think is the message?
I think that it's similar to what what Josefa just said.
Right.
I think that God wants us to be just, to be good, and to be kind. And I think that that's the message of it, to not be evil and arrogant.
Right. Okay. Okay, Amira and Iman, what do you say?
Yes, I think it's saying that God is telling you to do justice, and at the same time, He's reminding you that if we don't do justice, then there will be consequences. So we need to take heed.
Okay. And what about Sana Iqbal?
I think it means that we should be kind and we should be just instead of being evil and arrogant.
Look at what the verse says right after justice. It says, be just and show goodness. So the Arabic words are adl and ihsan. Fatima and Ariba.
So the message of this verse is that justice is one of the important things that Allah wants us to practice among with others mentioned in the verse, in this verse.
Okay, okay, just let me explain it a little more, although some of you have been able to come close. You see, there is one thing as what we call adl. Adl is the Arabic word for justice. And if you read the Arabic, you'll find that immediately after the word adl, there's this word called ihsan, which means goodness. And ihsan is actually a step above adl, or you can say that in this context, goodness is a step above adl, which means that adl would be, or justice would be, that you take, if you would like to take revenge from someone, you are given this opportunity by the book of God. Okay, you can take an equal revenge. But ihsan or goodness would be that you forgive that person even if that person has done something wrong to you. So this verse has another message which tells us that one thing is adl, one thing is justice, and one thing is above justice, and that is that you are even more magnanimous. You're not dispensing with just justice, you're doing over and above that. And this is what actually is at times needed, that you go ahead, you go forward and do something which is beyond the call of your duty, which is beyond justice, which is above justice. You're just not doing justice, but you are doing far above that by fulfilling the needs of the other person. You had the right, for example, to take revenge, but you did not take revenge, and you forgave that person. So another message is that although justice in most cases, as far as human beings are concerned, especially in human interactions, is a very good thing. You have the opportunity to pay back in equal coins, but if you at the same time forgive the other person, then that is above justice, that is more than what you could have done, and this is something which is very likable. So I think we have had a very good exhaustive discussion on these 5 verses vis-a-vis what the Quran tells us according to what justice is. And as I said, there are other verses as well, and these are the ones that I thought had a very special message, and they relate to us in our everyday lives. Okay, I'm going to skip to the last of these comprehension questions, because some of them are going to cover the first 2 questions as well, and I'm going to come back to one of them. The last of these questions is that every person is born with a special gift, and I think you would agree that each of you has a very special gift. So what do you think is the gift that you have that you could use to bring more justice in this world? So I'd like you, each one of you, to answer this, that all of you have just spoken about justice, all of you have just said how important justice is. So if I could ask you that how you could use the talents that you have to bring about more fairness, more justice in this world, what can you do personally? So what would that be? So I'll start off with Ahsan. Ahsan, can you please tell me?
Yes.
So what do you think is the talent that you have that can by using which you can change this world, or don't go as far as the world, even your own self or your society? What talent do you have that can bring about justice in our lives?
Like, be truthful.
So that would be something that you do. Something special that you have in yourself that you could use. Something that people praise in you, and you know that you have that talent, that quality that can really be helpful in bringing justice. So Fatima and Ariba.
Yeah, it's Fatima speaking. For me, I think it's empathy. I kind of am more aware of how others feel, and I act based on that.
Okay.
So when someone's mistreated, I would stand up for them. While for Ariba, it's her powerful voice.
Right. This is a beautiful answer. So Fatima, what you would do is that you'll be empathetic. You'll find out what exactly is going on by standing in the shoes of the other person. And that is exactly what is required, because you see, at times you misjudge the person, at times you misjudge the situation. So it is important to realize from where the other person is coming. At times you are just perceiving something which is not the truth. So you need to understand what exactly that person is imagining, or the situation that he or she finds herself in. And Ariba, as you said, is someone who has a very strong voice, who is a person who would side by the truth, who would always side by people who are truthful, or who are on the just path. And that is very important, you see, because you need people, you need like-minded people. And if you have one voice and you can actually tell the other person that you are by his side or by her side, it makes a lot of difference, and never underestimate this power. So thank you for that. So I now ask Fatima Hussain. Fatima Hussain?
Yes, being able to consider both sides, like when you're talking about justice, there's always two parties involved, 2 or more. So like being able to consider or like look at the whole picture.
So okay, it's like You see, you need to understand that this is something which relates to a person very specially. Each one of you has a special talent. It could be the fact that you are able to pick up the crux of the matter. You are able to go to the bottom of a situation, and you can judge between people. You can bring two people together, or it could be that as Ariba, we got to know about Ariba, that she can speak in favor of people and she has a strong voice. So it is a special talent that each one of you might be having, that is going to be, the ultimate thing in this matter. So think about what you as a person has, that special ability that can really bring about the change as far as justice is concerned. Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, Ahsan, I'm now going to ask you.
Yeah, I think I don't judge whether they're different from other. I just see if they're I just see the situation.
Right. Okay. So it's like judging the situation, and so I would
don't
say,
look at them.
right. Okay. Isa, what would you say? Okay. Next up is Mahin.
I think that the best compliment I got was that I came across as passionate in discussions about politics or social issues. So I think that passion can sort of allow me to be courageous and to keep bringing light to injustices and finding ways to solve them.
Okay. So that's an important thing. You see, one of the very significant ingredients that you need in this matter is to be courageous, to have the courage. So at times we think that there is something which is right, but we don't have the courage to express it, or we don't have the courage to side by a person who's being just. So I think this is a very important aspect that you pointed out, that yes, courage and strength, and you draw that inner strength from your own self, that come what may, I am going to be strong, and I'm not going to see what other people say. I'll just forget about what other people say, and I have to be courageous enough to express what the right thing is. So yes, that's a very important thing, and thank you for that. Okay, Maria.
I said listening to the other point of view and trying to understand them is important.
Okay. Sana.
I don't really pick sides. I look at the whole situation and then I sort of decide what's right and what's wrong.
Right. Wonderful. Okay, and Zara.
I think that I'm very empathetic, and so I think that would kind of fit in with being just, because then you allow every point of view to be heard.
Okay, Sine.
I like to write about injustices, so maybe I could raise awareness.
Oh, that's wonderful. So the point that you're making here is that you have this ability to write, and that is one way to resolve these things and to actually resolve the situation. So that's a very important thing. Just as we heard Ariba, that she has a strong voice, so we need people who are strong writers as well, who have this powerful writing ability. So Sina, you say that you can do this and write about these things, so that's excellent. Okay, Zirak.
I would say that I don't really accept told facts until I investigate them. So it's bringing justice by presenting facts irrespective of any bias or prejudice.
Okay, so that is a fantastic point that you have made, Zirak. Because you see, this happens that when you are trying to be just or dispensing justice, you often neglect the other story or the other person's point of view, and you don't investigate facts as much as you should have. And for a person who would like to make his share felt in the society as far as justice is concerned, it is extremely important that you base your decisions on bare facts, on hard facts, on facts which are well established, which are documented fully, and as far as human ability is concerned, there is no error in them. So that's a very important point for that, Zero. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll ask Ashar Chaudhary, if you've just joined, I know that, but what we're discussing here is that anything that you can do to contribute to bring about justice in our lives. Ashar, would you like to say a few words?
I think I'm responsible and be kind.
Okay. So you say that responsibility and responsible behavior is something that can ensure that as far as rights are concerned, there is no injustice. So that is an important thing as well, because you see, unless you're responsible, unless you in your own ability of being responsible, take care of things the way they should be, you cannot be thorough. And you see, justice requires thoroughness. It requires that we go deep into things and just don't dispense them or dismiss them. And so this is very important, that you take responsibility, you take the pain, and either you don't enter a situation, or if you do, then you are fully responsible and you give all your attention to that. Okay. And what about Dawar?
I think I'm trustworthy.
So, okay, so that is also a very important thing. If you're a person who is regarded as trustworthy, then people will often come to you and they will ask you to resolve matters. So, to earn the trust of someone is of special significance, and it is an indispensable quality of any person who would like to do something for the cause of justice, because that would mean that he is an unbiased person and people can really depend upon that person. So I think that is a wonderful thing that you can do. Okay, anyone else who would like to say anything? Anyone who might have missed out, who would like to say that he or she would do something to contribute to justice?
Whatever I have is quite similar to many other people, what other people have said, and it is at looking at every single person's point of view and then coming to a conclusion.
Okay, so that is of course so important, that you don't take things for granted. You investigate facts, you listen to both the parties, especially when a person, remember there's this very important thing that goes on, that when you see the tears of a person who is crying, these feelings of sympathy arise in you, and you often think that, well, this must be the person who has been treated unjustly, and so you become a little sympathetic, and at times you don't hear the other person, and when you do hear the other person, you realize that the person who was acting as if he was very innocent is actually someone who was the person who was responsible for injustice. So remember that don't give too much importance to the situation that a person might be in when he or she expresses her innocence or his innocence or cries before you, unless you hear the other person out as well. So thank you very much. This was also a very pleasant discussion and a very revealing discussion vis-a-vis the thing. Okay, one question that I'd now like to ask, any one of you can answer, is that it is the one that I mentioned at the second instance, which says that, can perfect justice be achieved in this world, and if not, why? So anyone who would volunteer to answer this, that can we have perfect justice in this world?
What I think is that there cannot be perfect justice because we aren't perfect ourselves. So we won't, every single time we see a situation, we won't be able to assess it correctly. We will be overcome with emotion or something like that, so we may be unjust to some people. So I don't think there can be perfect justice.
Okay. Anyone else?
So no life in this world is a test that comes with hurdles and hardships, and so perfect justice cannot be achieved.
Okay, so that was that Fatima?
No, Ariba.
Ariba, okay. The one who can speak for people who are treated unjustly. Okay, so anyone else? Why can't perfect justice be achieved in this world? We have got two answers, very, very good answers. Anyone who would add to this? Anyone who could? Yeah, Sine?
I think that if you were to implement like justice perfectly, you'd have to know everything, and that's very difficult because, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Okay, Maria, what do you think?
I don't think perfect justice can be prevailed because everyone would have their own opinion and there would be biasness reaching justice.
Okay. And Mahin?
I think that perfect justice is hard to accomplish, but I also think that there needs to be some degree of hopefulness and optimism to try and lessen the injustices.
Right. I think that's a very good point that all of you have raised, and I think I must give credit to Amira because she is the one who raised it for the first time. And I think that she just spoke one sentence, and that sort of sums up the whole thing. And that is that we cannot achieve justice in this world because all of us are imperfect. So perfect justice cannot be achieved by people who are imperfect. And as Sine and some of the other participants just said, that it's difficult to gauge all the all the data that we have. You see, what is possible in this world, I can term as possible justice. So perfect justice is virtually impossible. What can be achieved is possible justice because facts cannot always be present before a person who is judging. And similarly, it's always the fact that even if you are the best of judges, you can still make an error. Human error is something which can never be given up and it cannot be discounted. So the reason I would say that, Amira, you have beautifully summed it up, that perfect justice cannot be achieved because we have imperfections. All of us, we are imperfect, and so therefore if we have to achieve perfect justice, we need someone who is perfect, and that is God. And precisely for this reason, He is going to create a day of judgment in which that perfect justice, you know what, one thing which is very important for perfect justice is that you know the inner intentions of a person. You know how he is or she is from inside, because from outside a person could be posing to be someone else while he or she is someone else from inside. So no one from amongst us can judge a person from inside because we just cannot have a fair idea of the intentions. It is only God who has this idea of intentions and how a person is from inside. So that is another very important area, that since that cannot be done in this world and only God can have that done, so He has created that or set up that day of judgment. He's going to do that once so that perfect justice could be dispensed with, and then the result of that perfect justice also would be that people would be rewarded or punished on the basis of those perfect justice results which the Almighty has actually come to. So yes, that's a very important thing, that this we have to wait for perfect justice, but that doesn't mean that we should fall short. We should do as much as we can, and whatever we fall short of, that is going to be compensated much more than in the hereafter by the Almighty. So thank you very much for that. And before we move on to your quiz part, just let me see if we have one more question. And again, that is that, again, this is mention 5 acts of injustices that we as human beings are guilty of. So there are so many things that we do wrongly. So quickly, can we have an answer to these? Anyone who can name 5 injustices that we are guilty of? So Ahsan, can I start with you? So what are the 5 injustices that we do? If you're not able to make it 5, maybe just mention 1 or 2 that come to your mind.
Is it like personally?
Yeah, it could be personal, it could be collective. Anything that we as people do, which is not exactly justice. It would classify as injustice. Let me give you a hint. For example, nepotism. Instead of choosing someone on the basis of merit for a particular job or a particular school admission or a college admission, you see that there's someone who's a relative and you just jump and give that person the right. So this is one example of injustice, that you're favoring something out of merit. So does anything else come to your mind? Okay, Alicia?
Is racism an injustice?
Yes, I think so. It is, because you're treating the other person as he or she would be inferior to you. So that is a corollary of injustice. Maria?
I said hiding the truth.
Hiding the truth. Okay, that is a form of injustice, that instead of revealing the truth, you're hiding the truth. What about Amira?
I would say that one injustice that we do is that if we see like a person who is less than us, then we treat them as being less. We don't see it as this, that if they're less than us, that means the responsibility for them on us increases.
Okay, so this would be an injustice in your attitude.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a good point. Ashar, Ashar Chaudhary. So could you give an example of maybe one or two examples of injustices that we generally, not talking about you, but we human beings generally are guilty of?
Turning people off. Sometimes if they look for a job and you see that they can't find a job, just say, and you say like, no, you can't find a job. I think that's something injustice.
Well, you see, if they are not being able to find a job and you are not being able to offer it, that would not exactly be injustice, if I have heard you correctly. Injustice would be that a person deserves a job and you are preferring someone else because of your maybe relationship with that person. So that would be injustice. Yes, of course, turning someone off just because you would like another chance to be given to some other person, even if you don't know that person, that would also be injustice. Okay, what about Mahin? Mahin, would you like to add something to this?
No, I think not forgiving someone else by sitting into grudges and past.
So you're saying that not forgiving someone because?
Like by holding grudges.
By holding grudges. Okay, so that would not be a fair attitude. Even if that person especially is embarrassed and he or she is repeatedly apologizing, and maybe you also think that, well, I can forgive that person, but you just not feel up to it and you hold grudges against that person. Yes, that would also amount to an unjust or an unjust attitude. Okay, anyone else who would like to add something? Anyone?
So it's persecution or disapproval of people on the basis of the religion.
Right. So persecution on the basis of religion would be also an act of injustice, because then again you're regarding your own religion to be superior. Okay. Anyone else? Anything else that can be added? What about bribery? Isn't bribery a form of injustice?
Yes, it is.
And in embezzlement, dishonesty, exaggerating at times or understating at times, or gossiping, or not investigating facts. So there's so many things that you can, if you just start thinking, the list is simply unending, because you see, justice and truth, they are so closely related together that anything which is contrary to the truth is bound to be contrary to injustice, to justice as well. So do remember this, that the message that we should take home today is that whatever happens, we have to stick to what justice is. We have to stick to justice in our collective affairs. We have to stick to justice in our personal affairs, in our individual affairs, in our family affairs, in our friendship affairs, all these. Because you see, a person who is just, he is a person who is actually really doing justice as far as he can to what we just mentioned earlier on, in which we said that God himself is just. So if God is just, the biggest thing he requires us to do is that we also should be we just cannot be like him, that's virtually out of the question, but we need to be as far as we can just, because God is just, because he has created us in his own image, and for that we must stand up to what he has made us, and as far as possible practice justice. So this is the takeaway I would advise, and all of us need to review and revisit our situation. So now we come to the last of our segments that we usually do. So there is this quiz that you have in front of you. Please take a couple of minutes and tick the answers that apply to you. And as is generally the case, imagine yourself in the situation which a question might be depicting. So please begin now. Okay, so here goes the answers. So quiz is finished by all of you. Question number 1, we're going to just have this marked. Question number 1, the option number 1 has 10 marks. Those of you who have ticked the first option should give them 10 marks. The second has 8, the third has 5, and the fourth has a 0. So you mark them according to the scheme. So question number 2, first question has 3 marks, the second has a 0, the second option has a 0, and the third option has 10. Question number 3, the first option has 0 and the second option has 10. Question number 4, the first has a 0 and the second has a 10. Question number 5, the first has a 10, the second has -5, and the third has a 0. Question number 6, if the first has a 0, the second has 2, the third has -5, and the fourth has 10. Question number 7, the first has a 0 and the second has a 10. Question number 8, the first has -5, the second has 10, and the third has -5. Question number 9, the first has 10, the second option has -5, and the third option has 3. And the last question, option number 1 has 10 marks and option number 2 has -5 marks. So any one of you who would like to repeat any of these answers, just let me know. Otherwise, just total your marks. So remember, this is just sort of a not a very precise, but I would say a rough estimation of how just you are from inside, and you can always review some of the areas that perhaps you would like to improve yourself. So anyone who has scored above 60 is classified as good. Those who have scored above 70 are very good. Those who have scored above 80 are excellent, and above 90 is an exceptional grade, which means that, of course, you are right at the top. So any one of you who would like to share, I mean, not all of you, those of you who would not like to share, it's entirely your prerogative, your choice, but those of you who would like to share, so anyone who has gotten between 90 and 100.
I had between 80 and 90.
And you are, Ashur?
Ashur.
Okay, so Ashur, you had 80 and 90. And anyone who has above 90?
I had between 60 and 70.
Okay, that is Dawar. So you see, you don't need to get disappointed if you've scored below 60. And those of you who have scored above and would not like to share, I also appreciate that, because it's not always the right thing, as you can feel, but at times it is motivating for others too. But let me finish off this session today by thanking all of you to have participated so in such a lively manner. Thank you very much that you have been very good contributors to this theme of justice. Remember, this is the fundamental theme, and anything which is against justice is something that we need to work hard and really think twice in all our undertakings. Remember, it's not just your undertaking, it's also your tongue which represents justice. So be just with all your organs of the body, especially which express. So your speaking power and your writing power are the two very important areas in which you express yourselves. So dispense with justice orally and in the written word. And thank you very much for being here with us, and I hope all of us have learned from each other. I surely did from all of you. So we'll be back inshallah next Sunday with a different topic, and until then, it is Khuda Hafiz from your teacher.